the Baltimore Ravens are sitting there ready to play tonight, knowing that everybody won.
Yep.
And basically they gotta keep going, and that's what makes playing meaningful football late in the season so exciting.
You're listening to the Sports Fix. John McMullen joining me here. We're talking Browns, and we're mentioning injuries, and while you get the big boost from those guys being out there and potentially Jordan Cameron and then Dansby joining them back on the field this week, it's countered by another big one. Tayshaun Gibson, perhaps the defensive MVP this year. He's been doing such a great job out there as that center fielder, picking passes off and really just causing some havoc back there. One of the big standouts for the Browns. He goes down that collision at the goal line with Joe Hayden that initially looked like it just kind of shook both guys up. Joe Hayden made his way to his feet after a few minutes. Tayshaun Gibson tries to get up, can't get up, and he's got a knee injury, still waiting for an update on the seriousness of that. I don't know if you've heard anything, but right now nothing has come out from the Browns. I expect it a little bit here when they get done with their press conferences, but that's bad because losing Tayshaun, I mean, it's just, number one, you feel bad for him because, man, that kid has been a great story on this defense, but obviously you say next man up. When a guy's playing at a Pro Bowl level, it's a little bit harder to next man up.
Yeah, it is, and we talked about it on the offensive side with Alex Mack, and he's he's going to have an MRI, and the signs are not pointing toward a good outcome. But again, we heard some bad things last week, so you never know. You have to wait and see. But it's going to be a huge loss. You're talking about a guy with 6 interceptions, specifically on the pass coverage aspect, and you're right. He's been playing at a Pro Bowl level, and if you look at what's behind him, it's going to be a significant drop off. So it's one of those issues where you're going to have to make up for it in other places. Dante Whitner's had a very good year also. Yeah. But is Jim Leonard going to be able to hold it down? Jordan Poyer, I'm not sure what they can do there. All of a sudden, though, Joe Hayden starts looking like Joe Hayden again the last few weeks. So maybe the increase in production from the cornerback position can help. But clearly, guys are going to have to step it up if he's out for the season, as some fear.
Now, he went later in the game was when he got banged up, Gibson, but up until that point, and then even the rest of the game, I was going to ask you your thoughts. I thought the Browns' defensive backs overall as a whole did a pretty solid job against a very talented group. Yeah, there was guys that got open, and then Quan Williams on the touchdown, he missed his spot, and that left the wide opening there for the touchdown pass. It looked like it was Joe Hayden, but really it wasn't. The safety was supposed to drop back and fill that spot. But either way, for the most part, for considering the talent level there, that was the one weapon that Atlanta really brought in the game, was what they did with the pass. I thought the Browns' defensive backs, even Justin Gilbert out there, they went right after him on that key third down at the end of the game that they weren't able to convert, and the kid made a play when he needed to, even though he hasn't gotten much time to shine this year. But what did you think? I thought the Browns' defensive backs as a whole made a good showing of themselves, and I think Joe Hayden is definitely playing at a higher level than he was at the first few weeks of the season.
Well, you know what I said early in the season when people were saying Joe Hayden, was having such a bad year, and he was, let's be honest, he didn't play well at the beginning of the season, but it was kind of ludicrous when we, pointed out how poorly rated he was compared to other cornerbacks from a certain website that shall not be named. and I laughed at it, and there's a reason I laughed at it, because it's silly. And when you ask somebody to do as much as the Browns asked Joe Hayden to do, occasionally you are going to get beat. As we said, we're not talking about, when we talked about it, we're not talking about robots who don't make mistakes, and certainly at the cornerback position where every single thing is skewed against these guys, from the rule changes to the passing game, and everything being shifted towards that side of the ball. Well, whether you believe in the conspiracy theory of fantasy football and catering to those folks, or or whatever have you. Every single rule, seemingly, in the past 20 years has made it more difficult for cornerbacks to do their job. So when you have one like Joe Hayden, you ask him to do a lot of different things. And think about the talent, the Atlanta Falcons. We talk about all the bad things about the Atlanta Falcons. Well, the quarterback isn't bad, and those two wide receivers aren't bad. And they made some plays, but, overall, I thought he had a tremendous game. And, we talk about Justin Gilbert. Yeah, I'm disappointed. You know how I feel about that. I think he was on the field for, 6-7 plays, 6-7 reps. So, you're talking about a guy who's a top 10 pick and he can't get on the field. That speaks volumes.
Yeah, we've talked about that here, and it's so funny because people go, well, what do you think of the Browns draft? I said, man, well, except for the first round, I loved it, man. I thought they hit on some good stuff there, but the first one's the one that everybody looks at, so that's the one that'll get you fired, even though, to me, it's really the other ones that build your team. It's just the big, high-profile ones that stick out, and still, I haven't given up on Gilbert, but people know where I'm at with that, too, especially when, but you know what? And still, I'm not going to be that guy. Even with Josh Gordon coming back, as you can say, well, I guess we didn't need to draft that wide receiver. I'd still love to see what Josh Gordon on one side and old Sammy Watkins on the other side, or Mike Evans, or one of those other, or Odell.
Well, I got news for you. The people in Buffalo are now they're complaining because the Bills didn't draft Odell Beckham. So, everybody.
Of course they are, but
everybody's like that. And by no means am I trying to say that Justin Gilbert is a bust or doesn't have the ability to develop down the line. I just think where they took him, they reached drastically. He should have been. I had him rated in the early 20s as a prospect. So that's not like a bad prospect. If you're 21st, 22nd player in the draft, you still have a lot of talent. There's a lot of ability. My concern is where they picked him, and obviously the other options they had. If they didn't trade out, and even if they did, and we talk about Anthony Barr all the time. So those are my concerns, not the fact that he can't develop down the line.
Right, and then you and I have talked about that. Buffalo, we just brought that up. That's next team up for the Browns. They're playing tonight, even though they're not supposed to. We saw all of that snow. We talked about it last week here on the show throughout the week as they figured out what they're going to do. They're playing in Detroit, and that's going to be tonight at 7 o'clock. I've got to think, now I'm not in Buffalo. I've got some friends up there, but I haven't talked to anybody in about the last 48 hours or so. We got incredibly warm weather here in Cleveland yesterday and today. We're shorts and flip-flops out there today compared to the last couple of days. I'm thinking that Buffalo may be getting some of this warm front too, so that's going to incredibly expedite the process of getting that stadium cleared out, because they said, with that much snow, it could take upwards of 2.5 weeks to clear that much snow from the stadium and the parking lot. They got rain. I know they're supposed to get more snow at some point, but as it looks now, they should be able to play this game with the Browns in Buffalo next Sunday, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, now the issues are flooding and things like that, because you're right. Here it's already gotten east. Here it's 70 degrees today, and I think it's supposed to snow. I think it's supposed to snow on Wednesday. So, the craziness of the weather, and now they have all that snow, and then, as you mentioned, that warmer weather comes in, so now you have this incredible flooding issue. So, it's too early to tell, but yeah, I would think certainly. There's a much more likely chance now. Last week, the doom and gloom, we talk about, injuries, the doom and gloom saying, we don't know if Buffalo will be able to play again this year at home. I think that was a little far-reaching. But,
are you serious?
We'll see. Let's let them get through tonight, and we'll see how things are going. But, yeah, I would think it's more likely than not that the game will be in Buffalo.
I'm sorry. I no wonder. Some people just turn off their radios and never turn them back on again. When you hear ridiculous statements like that, like it's never snowed before in Buffalo, in the heart of the snow belt, and they don't know how to handle.
Well, 7 feet though, 7 feet more than even they're used to.
No, I got you there. But there's a month and a half left of the season. Let's not use statements like they may not be able to play there the rest of the year. Let's not go that far.
Well, and in society as a whole, and the governor of our state in Pennsylvania, the ex-governor Ed Rendell, is also the mayor of Philadelphia. If you remember, the Vikings were playing the Eagles here, and they canceled the game. They ended up blizzard was scheduled. They canceled the game before a snowflake dropped. They canceled the game, and he declared it the wussification of America.
I remember that.
And then being a very, very bad snowstorm. So they were right. But, when you cancel something before, it tells you it's a different world than it was many, many years ago.
Well, my friend, we know that for sure. Jets, and then we'll look ahead. We've got Buffalo coming up. Browns continuing along their, they've destiny here. I wanted to talk to you a bit about that. By the way, looking around the rest of the NFL, we saw that game. We mentioned Beckham's catch last night, but Dallas able to come back late. Des Bryant, does what he did. Des Bryant just coming through week after week here this season. Dallas wins that one there. I'll tell you what. How about the shootout with the Broncos and the Dolphins there, man? And definitely, even though they get the W there, some warts, I guess, on the resume for Denver here the last couple of weeks. Some things that they want to clean up as they start heading into, the important time of the season for them, I would think.
Yeah, there's got to be some concern there, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. They were getting handled pretty good by the Dolphins until that fourth down play, right. and that kind of shifted things and turned things around, and the Broncos got going. And when they get going offensively, they're tough to stop, obviously. And on the other side, I thought the Dolphins were heading in the right direction, and it was all because of that defense. And we know it's Peyton Manning and it's the Broncos, but still, when you give up 38 points, maybe that's another example of no matter how good you are defensively, what we talked about, the shifts in the game, the shifts in the philosophy, it's hold on for dear life as best you can because everything is geared against you.
About that all the time. Speaking of hold on for dear life, 43 points they dropped. Jekyll and Hyde performance over the last couple of weeks for these guys. Re-emerging there as the quarterback, getting his opportunity. He did okay, 30 of 43, had a couple of picks, took a couple of sacks there, but because Shady McCoy showed up and started playing some football. He had a great game yesterday, 130 on the ground, and that went a big way towards powering that offense for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, it was a positive development because he's been sort of like the Joe Hayden of the Eagles, and the fact that obviously people expect so much out of him, and he's had a poor season, rated very poorly by most people, and the bottom line is the talent's there. He's had to deal with an offensive line that's had a ton of injuries, and quarterbacks, whether it's been Foles or Sanchez, have been tremendously inconsistent. People forget Deshaun Jackson's gone, and you saw what a difference maker on the outside. When we talk about Josh Gordon, it makes a big difference underneath. When you have that safety rolled over the top, all of a sudden that not only opens up the underneath routes for the other receivers, it opens up space for running backs, and that's what I think more than anything LaShawn McCoy has been missing this year. But you saw him yesterday, albeit against a very, very poor Tennessee defense that allowed, Le'Veon Bell to rush for over 200 yards. So, you and I could probably hit 100 against the Titans, but it was still a positive development for the Eagles.
Absolutely. They continue to. Speaking of development, we see the emergence week by week here. Jordan Matthews, really his connection with Sanchez is more than obviously it was earlier, but he's continued to develop. And I'm mad at myself because in my DraftKings, in one of my one-day leagues, man, I had Delaney Walker, and I made a change because I wanted to spend a little bit more at a different position, so I tweaked some guys around, and I ended up not playing Delaney Walker, and he went off for $155 against those guys. Real quick, while we're talking, I want to update you. Just got a